This is going to be the official home field advantage ranking list. Let's get into it. First two teams right off the bat are going to be the Rams and the Chargers. Both share the same stadium in LA, SoFi Stadium. It is a very nice stadium, and I do like watching it on TV. The issue for both these teams, they both share one issue, and then the Chargers have a separate issue. So we'll start off with the Rams. When they play, especially when they play in division teams like the 49ers will have 70% of the fans. And although this is something you have to deal with on the road, especially when it's a good home field advantage, it's more demoralizing at home against a division rival when you can't hear your own plays. It just adds an extra level to it. We're at home. These are supposed to be our fans, and all I see is red, and they're loud when we're trying to score. So it just is. It's almost a negative home field advantage. The Rams would be better playing on the road for some of these games. Now, with the Chargers, they kind of deal with the same thing in them being they don't have a home field advantage. They moved from San Diego. Most of the fans did not travel. And also, this is kind of something that's going to be factored in throughout the video, they are a run-first team, which is fine. You know, being in a dome doesn't hurt that. But if you're a run-first team, you generally like to play in the elements, and you have pass-first teams come into your cold-weather stadium, and then you dominate them. It's cold, it's wet. They don't do either of those things. So both these teams have very poor home field advantages. Now we've got two teams, the Jets and the Giants. They share MetLife up there in the Northeast. It gets somewhat cold, obviously, being in the Northeast in New Jersey over there. It's nothing crazy, though. And, they're not raucous fans, especially with both teams being pretty bad. As I was talking with the Chargers, they've got that strong run game. At least they're trying to have a strong run game. The Jets and the Giants don't have a strong anything. So it's not like they're running the ball a lot on you. Neither team has a great rushing attack. The Jets are better than the Giants for sure with Breece Hall. But both of these teams are mediocre. They're not really taking advantage of anything. And although it is somewhat cold, especially if you're getting into January, they're not playing in January. So, you've got a couple cold home games at the end of the season, but these teams have already given up by the time they get to their quote-unquote home field advantage. Now, I've got this one, and a lot of you guys might disagree with it. I've got the Cleveland Browns in above average. I think, you got a little bit of that lake effect snow possibly sometimes. It's cold up there in Cleveland. I think the Cleveland Browns have tried to build a strong defensive line. They've got Myles Garrett. And I would just lean towards them being above average. I'm kind of teetering on below average to above average with the Cleveland Browns, but I think they've got a good group of fans, especially them playing at home against the Ravens, the Steelers, the Bengals. Even when the Browns have sucked recently, they've still kind of been a tough out. You go to Cleveland, it might be a little bit windy. You've got a strong defense. The fans get into it. So I think the Browns have a slightly above average home field advantage. Now, we're going with the Atlanta Falcons, also an above average. They've got a strong passing attack with London, with Kyle Pitts, with Drake London, and Michael Penix. So I think this is a high-flying offense, and that kind of caters to the Falcons, obviously. In terms of fans, I don't think it's anything crazy. I've never seen them kind of get matched 50-50. It's generally going to be more Falcon fans. So I'm going to go Falcons there. Now, the 49ers. I think this is a full 3-point swing in Vegas. When I say a full 3-point swing, what I mean by that is if we were going from a neutral site to the 49ers, like let's say they got to play the Super Bowl in Super Bowl might not be a great example because a lot of rich people go, so they're not really Niner fans. But if for some reason NFC Championship was going to be neutral site, if all of a sudden they moved it to San Francisco, I think it'd be a legit 3-point swing in the Vegas odds. So I think they've got a strong fan group over there. And it's not too cold, not too warm, nothing temperature-wise that's going to affect them. But just kind of that backdrop, the vibes coming out of San Francisco, especially when they were good in the 2010s. Alex Smith, Colin Kaepernick, and maybe they'll have another good run with Brock Purdy. Next team is going to be the Carolina Panthers. They don't really have a strong. They don't really feel like a strong football city. David Tepper, that's his name, something Tepper, whatever the owner's name is. He's not really a football guy. Doesn't really feel like a football city, not a sports city in general. Hornets suck as well. There's just not much going on here. I mean, it's not going to get super hot at any point. It's not going to get super cold. They're not going to have a big snowstorm. Their fans aren't that crazy. It's better than nothing. I don't think the Panthers have a demoralizing situation like the Rams and Chargers, but it's not really helping you out much. Now, I'm teetering with the Seahawks between 3-point swing and scary. This is 2025, I'm going to go full 3-point swing in Vegas. I would say during their run with Cam Chancellor, Earl Thomas, Richard Sherman, etc., I would go scary for sure, and no one has a doubt about that, with it being, that 4 o'clock window, if you're on the East Coast like me, that 4:25 window where it's raining on the West Coast every single weekend. They're just playing nasty defense. They're hitting hard. That stadium, I think, was the loudest outdoor stadium ever until the Kansas City Chiefs, which we'll touch on in a second, broke that record. But they are loud. See a lot of blue, a lot of neon green, 12th man. I think with the identity not really being Marshawn Lynch and a strong defense, I'm going to put them at a 3-point swing. But it's close. It's in between scary and 3-point swing. Buffalo, we're going scary. You don't want to play this team in December. You don't want to play them in January, especially with the addition of Josh Allen. Now you've got James Cook, so you've got a strong run game. You've got a pretty good defense. It wasn't as good as it was a couple of years ago, but still a top 10 defense, a big quarterback, a strong run game. You've got 2 good tight ends. They're crazy up there. It's cold, obviously, lake effect snow. And it's just the perfect storm. Now, do I think the Bills rival the Seahawks when they had the Legion of Boom? No. I don't think it's that nasty. But I think anyone trying to argue that the Buffalo Bills are not a scary team to play at late in the year are lying to you. Next team on the list is going to be the Green Bay Packers. Pretty similar to the Bills. I think they're just a tier below. Cold, crazy fans. I don't really think they fulfill that kind of tough team. I think Jordan Love's a flashy quarterback. I don't think the run game is elite. It's okay. The defense isn't tough. The Green Bay, that team feels more of like a dome team. They feel like more of a dome team. They do get some advantage playing up in the north, but I don't think I wouldn't consider it scary per se. New Orleans Saints, we're going to go above average. Look, I know this team sucks. They get loud. If that team makes the playoffs this year, is competitive, November, December, if they're playing a division foe like the Falcons, if they're playing another team in the NFC, that place is going to get loud. Got a nice stadium. The real issue, obviously, with them being a full 3-point swing is the team is just bad. It's hard to have a home field advantage when you're always losing and the crowd can't get into it. They don't really have a strong identity. They're not like Drew Brees, that pass happy attack, him and Jimmy Graham, Marquise Colston, etc. So I think just with them being so mediocre, not having a quarterback, not having a strong run game. I know Alvin Kamara is good, but he's not a strong run game per se. Next team is going to be the Raiders. I love their old stadium with the baseball field in it. I don't really like this Las Vegas vibe. Now, same thing with the Chargers and the Rams. I love watching these games on TV. I think the stadium looks cool, no doubt. And it's like it'd be a cool place to visit or a cool place to watch a Super Bowl in. But when you look at the Raiders stadium, it doesn't look like the Raiders stadium. The Raiders, they're black, they're white, they're gray. They're supposed to be tough. They've got Geno Smith. They just took Genty. So, they're trying to build, and they got Pete Carroll, obviously, from Seattle. They're trying to build this smash-mouth team. And you're in a pretty dome in a gambling town. It just doesn't make a lot. I mean, I know the Raiders were never upstanding citizens, but this is supposed to be an outdoor team, and they're playing in a dome. I mean, It's not terrible because the fans travel. I will give them that. They do travel, but it's not an above average location. Now this one's going to be controversial. A lot of people probably will overhype the Dallas Cowboys and say they're full 3-point swing. I don't think so. I really don't think so. They're America's team supposedly. I don't I don't see it. I really don't see it. And another thing, and I know this, some people are like, well, how's this even relevant? They built the stadium incorrectly to where the sun shines in one. And I know you guys have seen this. Wide receivers for both teams are just dropping the ball. And that's not really a home field advantage. Buffalo, when it's cold, you can have a big quarterback. You can just out physical the other team. Something like that. I mean, you don't really practice for that. Like, what is CeeDee Lamb supposed to do? Wear sunglasses? The Cowboys Stadium, it just doesn't have that. Doesn't have that vibe of. It's not intimidating. They're not a high flying offense. I mean, they're okay on offense, but Dak's not an elite passer. CeeDee Lamb's a good receiver, but maybe this year they'll move up to full 3-point swing if they've got an elite aerial attack and they really take advantage of that home field advantage. But as of right now, I think they're just above average. Another team that I think is above average is the Chicago Bears. I think this could move up to full 3-point swing. The Bears have a legit fan base for sure. They have been yearning for a good quarterback, and maybe Caleb is that. I don't really like that, Chicago feels like it needs to be a good defense, which they had a couple of years ago with Khalil Mack and all of them. I kind of like that team a lot. This team feels like it's more of a dome again. I know I've said that a few times, but some teams feel like they're more of a dome the way they're constructed. Chicago needs to be a tough team. If you threw like Baltimore over there to Chicago, that'd be perfect. Good defense, good run game. It's just Caleb Williams. Does he feel like he's a Chicago guy? Can he really rally the troops? It doesn't feel that way to me. Now, they do have a strong fan base, so if this team is good, they're going to get up for Sunday Night Football. They're going to get up for Monday Night Football. I mean, that team will get loud. So I'm going to put them in above average. Indianapolis Colts. When I think about that stadium, it just reminds me of 1 o'clock, Colts at home, who cares? If you're not a Colts fan, are you ever tuning in? Are you ever like, oh man, that vibe is going to be crazy in that Colts stadium? 1 o'clock. And look, I know with old Peyton Manning, that stadium had a lot more meaning, but it's just like, it's an indoor stadium. The team is below average. The division is below average. They're always playing at 1 p.m. It's just that kind of throwaway. It's that game you've got to, you're trying to watch your team on DirecTV and you got to skip over that. You're like, no, I don't want to watch this. It just feels I mean, like I said, it's not a negative home field advantage. It's not a neutral. It does give you something. You don't have to drive anywhere. You're gonna have more fans than their team, but they're not getting crazy per se. Now this one, a lot of people are gonna throw a fit about this. The Miami Dolphins have literally constructed their stadium to where their side gets shade, and the other, I was saying that correctly. Their side gets shade, and the other team does not. I mean, think about this. And it only matters in September and October, but, well, I guess it matters later in the year. But when it's 100 degrees in Miami and with the sun beaming down at 1 o'clock where it's right overhead, I mean, that's a big deal. Like, that is a huge deal. They're an up-tempo team. Tua, Devin Achane, Jalen Williams, or I meant to say Waddle, and Tyreek Hill. And it's just like, I mean, this is the perfect hot weather team early in the year. And it matters for sure. New England Patriots. This is a little bit of a nostalgia pick here, I'll be honest. With Tom Brady playing up there in Foxborough, that's a scary place to play. They probably at this point are below average. They don't have a culture. They don't have that strong run game. They don't have that strong defense. But they've got a good fan base, obviously. That stadium is iconic. It means something playing late in the year there. If this team can be okay, and all I'm saying is okay, they don't have to be great, but if this team can be okay, this stadium can really have some meaning and help this team out. The Detroit Lions, Ford Field. You could argue scary. It's tough for me to go scary with an indoor stadium because you're not really getting the wet. Well, you aren't getting the weather involved. If anyone remembers that one reporter, they were asking, I think it was Jared Goff. They're asking him what he thinks about playing in the cold, and he's like, "We're in a dome," and it's just like, I mean, these reporters that don't know what they're talking about. That is completely irrelevant to this point. But anyways, the Detroit Lions. It's just like crazy fan base. All you see is blue. They're jumping on tables. They're going bonkers. I mean, it gets rowdy in there. Win or lose. I mean, even when this team sucked, they were going crazy. So, got a strong coach in Dan Campbell. You've got a good identity. This team really bonds. I think it's a legit 3-point swing over there. Next team on the list is going to be the Cincinnati Bengals. I'm just going to say they're below average. I mean, geographically, it's not going to get super cold in Cincinnati. You know, maybe if they're playing in well, they're never really playing in January. They had that one magical playoff run, but it doesn't really get that scary in Cincinnati. They've got a good team, obviously, and the fans are okay, but there's just nothing spectacular about playing Cincinnati. You know, when you see Cincinnati, when I remember the Broncos were playing, both the Bengals and Broncos were playing for their playoff lives, and the Bengals need to win to stay alive. And when you look at the spread, you're like, man, these two teams are even, and the Bengals are -1.5 or -2. It's like, you know, late in the year, Bengals have the momentum, and the home field isn't gonna carry them over the top. You know, both teams are pretty much even when it comes to the spread. It's not really an intimidating place to play. Next team is the Tennessee Titans. Now, they are getting a new stadium in 2027. It's going to be an indoor/outdoor. I'm not really sure what that means. I guess it's a retractable roof, I think. I haven't really looked at the rendering. So I've got them at F for either. You know, I don't think the Titans are... They're always playing that 1 o'clock window. Kind of similar to the Bengals. They're not getting super hot or super cold. I don't really feel anything with this Titans team. Even when they dare kind of in that strong rush attack. You know, they're winning games, and kind of like the Bengals have been with Joe Burrow, but it doesn't feel scary. You know, you don't see Tennessee Titans. You might be scared of the team if they're good, but I'm not intimidated by that fan base. Next team on the list is the Philadelphia Eagles, and you could argue scary. It's close. Same thing with the Seahawks. You know, both those teams are close. I'm just going to have them in full 3-point swing territory. Geographically, they're not getting, you know, as cold or as hot as Buffalo or Miami. And the fans are crazy, obviously. You know, they're fighting people. They're cussing people out. It's insane in Philly. You know what? I'm going scary. I think I've convinced myself. I think the Eagles are a scary place to play, especially with how good this team is. Ironically enough, I think the team being this good almost takes away, and with them having all these stars, it almost takes away from their home field advantage, because a home field advantage you need when it's, you know, you're up by 4 points and the other team has the ball 2 minutes and no timeouts. The Eagles are so good that the home field advantage isn't as important because they're not in these loud moments. You know, the crowd doesn't get loud when you're up by 25. They might get a little bit loud for a second, but the crowd gets loud when it's needed. And because the Eagles are so good, it's not needed as much. You know, life's just kind of out of the stadium. So that's why I originally put them in full 3-point swing, but I think the Eagles just get over the hump. Jacksonville Jaguars, I'm going to put them in below average. You know, obviously I thought about F for a second, but I'm going to put them in below average. They're hot. They're not as hot as the Dolphins. They're a good couple hundred miles north of Miami. And the climate's a lot different. They don't have that home field advantage where they're forcing their team in the sun. And they also, well, they might with Trevor Lawrence and Travis Hunter and Brian Thomas, but at least as of right now, and I haven't seen the offense with the new coach, but it doesn't feel like a high-tempo offense. It doesn't feel like there's going to be, you know, just kind of that speed all over the field that really exacerbates you're low stamina because of the heat with the Dolphins. I think they're just kind of below average. I mean, it means something if you're playing early in the year. It's hot. It's Jacksonville. They're a newer team. It's not a super big sports city, so they're just kind of meh. Denver's tough. The Denver Broncos, especially with Manning and that high flying defense with all those guys. The year they won the Super Bowl, I'd probably put them in scary. You know what? I'm also going to move them up to scary. I think the Denver Broncos with that high altitude, it changes the game. It really does. Having a high stamina, that's something that the Broncos probably should be and maybe they are behind the scenes and we just don't know about it. But one thing that the Broncos should definitely consider is trying to run as many plays as possible. I'd have to Google it to see, but I don't feel like they were super high tempo. I'm not sure. Someone can fact check me on that, but pretty big advantage. You can't control the defense, obviously, or the other team. You can't control how many snaps your defense has per se, because the other team can go slow. But you could snap the ball 15 seconds every single time on the play clock and add a bunch more plays and, really tire out the other team. You're used to playing the high altitude. They're not. I think that could be a very big advantage if they're not already doing it. I don't watch enough Broncos to know, but high altitude, it gets cold, obviously. They're loud. That stadium's iconic, especially when they're really good. And, I think they're legit. Full 3-point swing, the Minnesota Vikings. I think they're very similar to the Detroit Lions. The Lions feel like they could play outside. The Vikings don't really. They feel like kind of more of a soft team. But that's okay, because those fans are crazy. That place is loud. It's iconic. That place gets rocking. Now, unfortunately, they've had good teams, but they haven't had sustained success. They'll have this one-off year with 14 wins. They'll go 2 or 3 years mediocre. They don't have kind of these sustained long periods of time with winning. But I think the Vikings are a legit home field advantage. Next team on the list is going to be the Arizona Cardinals. They play in a dome currently with Kyler Murray, Marvin Harrison, etc. Somewhat helpful, for that passing attack. I'm in between and below average. I'm probably going to keep them in below average. I think that they get a decent advantage from playing at home, but I don't think it's anything crazy. I really don't have much to say on this team, honestly. Next team on scary is going to be the Pittsburgh Steelers. Now, I know people are like, oh, they suck. They're always 9-8 or 8-8 before we got the 17th game. It doesn't matter. That's kind of what I was talking about with the Eagles, on how them being so good, it takes away from their home field advantage. The Steelers being mediocre helps with their home field advantage. And I'm a Ravens fan, just full disclosure. When you go into Pittsburgh as a division foe, or if you're the Chiefs, or if you're the Patriots when they had Brady, or the Colts with Manning, it's loud. The terrible towels are waving. You've always got those same commentators that, they just, I don't know who the commentators are, but they're always the same people. It's always that 4:25 window. It gets dark after halftime. It's just a vibe, and it's an energy, especially when they've got good defenses with James Harrison and them guys, Troy Polamalu. Now they've got T.J. Watt in that defense. There's just kind of that vibe. They're tough. Even if they're 2-5, you still know you're not going to go into there and walk them over. They're going to be tough. You might beat them, but it's going to be hostile. For some reason, all the kicks from everyone other than Boswell, they miss. I don't know why, but it's legit. As a Ravens fan, I will admit, it is a legit home field advantage. One team that we've got in the below average is going to be the Houston Texans. Nothing, kind of similar to the Cardinals here. Now, both these teams do have passing quarterbacks, so it's a bit of an advantage. Top 10 quarterbacks, you've got good passing offenses. It's going to be beneficial for shootouts. I'm gonna move the Texans up to above average. I do think the Texans are an above average home field advantage, but nothing crazy. Washington Commanders. I'm gonna put them in they just don't. The ownership there, they had them as the Redskins for a while. Now they're the Commanders. Guy to sell the team. They're always rotating. Now, Jaden Daniels can usher in a new era of this team, but it doesn't. It just doesn't feel intimidating. It doesn't feel anything. It just feels like the logo feels fake. It feels like they slapped this team together. They're not playing in DC. They don't really have a culture. Now, I know I'm blanking on his name. Whatever his name is, old Cowboys coach. He's a good guy. They're kind of ushering in a new culture, but everything just feels kind of slapped together. They don't, when you're going to play Washington, it's like, okay, it's kind of a neutral site game. Now we've got the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. We're gonna put them in above average. They got to get some credit for being in Florida. They're not as hot as the Dolphins, and they're also not. They didn't build their stadium to get the advantage the Dolphins did, but they're hot. If you play them early in the year, it definitely matters. If you're not ready for it, they're decent. Obviously being an above average, they're something, but I don't really have much to say on this. Next team on the list is going to be in the scary category. We've got the Kansas City Chiefs. Loudest stadium in the NFL, according to that decibel record thing. It was the Seahawks, now it's the Kansas City Chiefs, if I'm correct. Unless anyone else has broken it for an outdoor stadium. In the United States. I know soccer stadiums overseas get louder, but in the United States, they're the loudest outdoor stadium. All these games in Kansas City, they're played late at night. It's cold, it's dreary, it's Kansas City. It can get cold. I'm really surprised, honestly, with them not being kind of centered right in the middle of the country, honestly, but they get cold. Part of that is they're always playing home games in January, so it kind of biases us. We see them on TV, and it's like, oh, it's 14 degrees again and again and again because they're always playing when it's cold, but regardless, they've got loud fans. They've got a lot of fans. They've got a culture with Mahomes, obviously. And it's just an intimidating place to go and play, especially at nighttime, especially late in the year. Next team on the list is going to be last team on the list is going to be my own beloved Ravens. A lot of people are going to disagree with this and say full 3-point swing or scary. Look, as a Ravens fan, I just don't feel it. I really don't feel it. Now, I have actually been to a Ravens game, and it's loud, obviously. Every professional venue is loud. It's hard to explain if you're not a Ravens fan, but any Ravens fans can probably attest to this. There's kind of an energy in the stadium, and in big games, when we play at home, we're not winning them to the level we should. We're probably below 500 in the last 5 to 10 years in big games at home. Now, those are good teams that we're playing, obviously, the Chiefs, the Bills, Eagles, the Steelers. But the home field advantage isn't really, it doesn't really feel like the weather is ever getting involved. It's always 52 in Baltimore. It doesn't ever seem like it's raining or snowing, which isn't helping us out with Derrick Henry and Lamar Jackson. And, it just, the fans are loud, and when we have good defenses, I think it's more helpful. But there's something about Baltimore. It doesn't feel like the Ravens players are getting that energy from the crowd.